Welcome back to Lost Files. Today, we are going deep, peeling back the veneer of the ordinary to look at cases that defy scientific explanation. We're talking about moments where the logic of our three-dimensional world simply breaks down. These are unsettling anomalies, linked directly to the looming presence of the legendary North American cryptid and the terrifying forces we've come to call dimensional rifts. But first, a quick announcement for those ready to face the unknown. This is coming up November 28th at the Tacoma Convention Center. It's the premiere of our new documentary, American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster. You can find tickets right now on the website, missing411.com. We hope tickets are still available for you because this is an event you won't want to miss. We have 2 tiers available: standard entry and a premier tier that we've designed to be something very special. The Tacoma Convention Center is a truly historic location, not far from Seattle. We chose the Pacific Northwest because, for our world, that is the undisputed hub of Bigfoot activity. We also wanted it close enough to Vancouver so our Canadian friends can easily join us. We're bringing in some truly sharp researchers, people who have walked the darkest corners of the forests. Following the premiere, I'll be doing a little Q&A with the audience. I'm also bringing up a couple of the film's key researchers to talk about their chilling experiences and the knowledge they've uncovered. It is absolutely going to be an unforgettable night. For those who can't make the event, mark your calendars. The official movie poster will go up for sale December 1st on the website, missing411.com. We've also got some really cool new gear, hats and beanies featuring the American Sasquatch logo. You can wear them while you're out searching the high-strangeness zones. And yes, I wrote a brand new book, same title as the movie. It contains everything we couldn't possibly fit into the film, including detailed evidence logs and new hypotheses. I've had people read it and tell me, "Lost Files, you dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's." They said, "This is the definitive read to fully grasp the truth." The book, the hats, the DVDs, and the Blu-rays will all be available for purchase on the site, beginning December 1st. Now, understand this, out of all the films and documentaries I've made, this one is probably the most different. It is a deep, focused dive into one single massive phenomenon. I need to emphasize, this documentary has nothing whatsoever to do with Missing 411. While some fringe sites like to connect every mystery, this is a standalone topic. My fascination with the Sasquatch enigma began long before I ever got into the Missing 411 cases. If you want a preview, check out the trailer on our YouTube channel, the Can-Am Missing Project. You can find the trailer by clicking on our videos and scrolling down. I also did a fascinating second video that analyzes the trailer itself, revealing a few hidden clues about the film's content. Go over there and watch that as well. Now, let's turn our attention to the cold, dark reality of inexplicable vanishings. Today, I've broken this segment into 2 distinct areas. The first deals with a truly baffling missing person case out of Northern Ontario. The second deals with an eerie pattern of missing children, but with a horrifying twist, one that suggests an almost mythological, predatory presence in our forests. The first part of this program deals with a highly intelligent man named Sudesh Singh. He was 42 years old, originally from India, and he vanished on November 16, 1985. The disappearance occurred from a location called Lake Teresa, an area of profound wilderness in Ontario. This rough territory is near Marathon, Ontario, close to Lake Superior and the Pukasqua National Park. If you examine the maps closely, you see hundreds of small lakes and treacherous swamps. I have personally documented multiple other cases of inexplicable disappearances from this exact, magnetically charged region. Sudesh Singh was not just smart, he was an accomplished geologist. He owned a thriving company in Ottawa and was on this trip to search for gold or samples. He was working the north end of Lake Teresa with 3 seasoned associates, men he had worked with professionally for many years. At one point during the day, the group split up to cover ground more efficiently. Sudesh went to one nearby area, while his 3 men took different paths. They were apart for a few hours, then scheduled to meet back at their base camp, which was only about 2 kilometers away. A short, easily navigated distance. But at the end of that fateful day, Sudesh Singh simply did not show up at camp. His associates immediately went out, frantically searching and calling his name. It was bitterly cold, right on the threshold of winter. They searched until after dark, finding absolutely nothing. They continued the search all the following day, November 17th, still with no sign of their boss. Finally, at the end of that second day, one of the team members left the site to travel out and call for official assistance. The Ontario Provincial Police, the OPP, arrived late on November 18th. The officers interviewed the employees individually, trying to reconstruct the last known movements of Sudesh. The OPP quickly grasped that the scope of this vanishing was far too big for local resources, and they immediately called for large-scale assistance from the provincial headquarters. The true search and rescue began on November 19th. The OPP managed to gather 11 local outfitters, men who knew the deep bush better than anyone. They also immediately called for a police helicopter, specialist K-9 units, and more OPP officers. Constable Wendell Brown, a seasoned veteran of the local area, coordinated everything. Brown noted that when the search began, there were a couple of inches of crusty, patchy snow on the ground. He described the area to the press as being intensely rough, brutally rugged, and dangerously swampy in many locations. The conditions were wet and freezing, which is a lethal combination. In these freezing temperatures, getting wet means hypothermia will set in rapidly. Yet, these men were professionals working close to camp. Each man carried a map and a compass. Sudesh, being a geologist, was an expert navigator. They all knew the area well. The police helicopter arrived late on the 19th and was immediately deployed to the area, looking for Sudesh or any sign of him. They utilized the helicopter not just for air searches, but for transporting searchers, eliminating the wasted time of long drives into the remote bush. The area they were combing around Lake Teresa was a terrifying labyrinth of hundreds of small lakes and ponds. On November 20th, the search continued, now with 20 ground-pounders brought in via the helicopter. They began a smart, grid-pattern search, working outwards from the last point Sudesh was seen. They let the dogs lead, hoping for a clean scent track, but they were having absolutely no luck. The search continued through November 21st, but the OPP gave an interview stating the efforts had to be suspended midday due to heavy, ongoing snowfall. However, the specialized K-9 unit was kept working through the snow. The police officer said something that is key to this entire case. He was optimistic they would find Sudesh. Why? Because Sudesh knew the area, he was a compass expert, and he had a map. Nobody truly believed he was simply lost. They feared he might be injured or trapped somewhere. His employees stayed right on site, working non-stop, utterly confused about the vanishing. They knew he wouldn't go far, and the area was confined by a river nobody would dare cross in those freezing conditions. The weather in that region can turn ugly at a moment's notice. On November 22nd, heavy, relentless snow began to fall. The swampy areas were becoming deadly. Searchers were wading up to their chests in icy water. They had 25 searchers and one dog, but the dog was still having absolutely no success detecting any trace of the missing man. 2 kilometers from camp is truly nothing, especially in an age of thermal imaging helicopters. Even if he was injured, his body heat signature should have made him an easy find. The search commander stated that the search would continue for as long as they believed Sudesh could be found alive. On the 23rd, the Ottawa papers ran an extensive, heartbreaking article about Singh and his family. His wife, Frances, an expert geographer herself, told the press they were tormented. She reiterated, "A geologist, 2 kilometers from camp, map and compass in hand, does not just vanish." She suggested the only possibility was that he tried to cross the river and drowned. But there's one major problem with that theory. It was 35 degrees Fahrenheit at the warmest the day he disappeared. Nobody crosses a freezing river unless they are forced because hypothermia would be instant. 36 police officers and volunteers continued to search. The commander emphasized, Sudesh had worked in the woods his entire life. He knew that area intimately. So what could possibly happen? There are no major roads nearby, no car abduction. He did not simply walk out. This is where the true anomaly of the region must be considered. Northern Ontario, particularly in these rugged, forested zones, is notorious for more than just Bigfoot. There are persistent, unsettling reports of strange atmospheric distortions and light signs of potential dimensional rifts. Could Sudesh Singh, a geologist looking at the ground, sampling for natural magnetism and/or have stumbled into a tear in the fabric of spacetime? A rift explains why the K9s lost the scent trail. It vanished at the dimensional threshold. He was no longer in our reality. On November 25th, up to a foot of heavy snow had already fallen. Searchers were risking their lives in the frigid swamps. They pressed on, but the cold weather system was about to drop a final, lethal blow to the search efforts. November 26th. A catastrophic cold weather system blew in from northern Canada, dropping temperatures as low as a deadly -21 degrees Celsius. At that point, the police commanders met. The decision was agonizing but final. They determined there was no chance of Sudesh surviving that kind of exposure and called off the search. It was simply too dangerous for the searchers to continue. They contacted Francis Singh and explained the devastating circumstances. The family, despite their torment, understood the decision to terminate. The OPP promised the family that they would make another effort in the spring. Given Sudesh's wife's powerful government contacts, it must have been truly harsh conditions for them to terminate all efforts. And they kept their promise. They waited for 95% of the snow to melt. On May 22, 1986, the OPP returned. 12 officers and 2 outfitters went back into the area where Sudesh's company was working 6 months earlier. The OPP focused on a 10-kilometer square area that they believed had an outside chance of concealing him. They grid-searched this zone for a couple of days using a helicopter for transport, but this time they did not have a canine. Why no dog? Well, the only useful dog at that point would have been a cadaver dog, and apparently one was not available or was ineffective given the time that had passed. The ground pounders and the helicopter found nothing. The OPP officially stated that there would be no further searches. It was a devastating finality for the family. It's now been nearly 40 years, and Sudesh Singh has never been found. Chances that he got lost? Next to zero. I simply do not believe he got lost. He was an expert. Missing geologists are quickly becoming a disturbing, unexplained subgroup. They are like berry pickers, people primarily looking down at the ground, often removing things like gold or from the earth. Is there something about that action of drilling and sampling that instigates a violent supernatural response? There was water surrounding the entire area. Canines were brought to the scene, yet they couldn't find a scent trail. The weather was a factor, but the lack of evidence is the true enigma. This area of Canada and many other remote regions has a history of these occurrences. It tells you that the phenomenon is localized and persistent. This makes me very sad for Sudesh's family, who have to live with the fact that their loved one vanished into thin air. Now, let's get to part 2 of this program, the terrifying twist of disappearing children. This will serve as a parallel example of dimensional displacement. My early work on Missing 411 featured young kids disappearing in the wilderness for a reason. A 2-year-old cannot walk through the woods over 2 mountain ranges and 12 miles. This fact forces you to accept that these extensively long, impossible trips the kids are making suggest that something unusual, something beyond our current science, is happening. In my recent research, I came across more historical children's stories that are equally shocking. August 24, 1939. The Siskiyou Daily News, Northern California. Boy 3, lost in hills for 5 hours. 200 men searched for little Edward Bates Jr. at Greenview. The child was discovered several miles from the ranch where his parents were visiting. He was unharmed, found at 9 p.m., and still actively walking, trying to climb the mountains. Several miles at 3 years old, still walking. It simply does not make sense. June 26, 1939, Winton, Australia. Tom Clough, 4.5, wandered away from his parents' home. Despite an intensive search, he was found 10 miles from his home. The child was cheerful and, impossibly, still pushing a go-kart he had taken with him. Police estimate he must have traveled 20 or 25 miles. Is that physically possible for a 4.5-year-old? The sheer, almost superhuman endurance these children display strongly suggests an external, unknown force is assisting or controlling their movement. The Advertiser, Australia. Body of missing child found. 7-year-old Doris Goldstariver was discovered by her uncle 11 miles from her grandmother's home. She was found dead from heat exhaustion, having lost her hat and her shoes in her wanderings through the rough terrain. 11 miles from home meant she had to have traveled 20 or 25 miles through the bush. I'll tell you, I'm no expert, but if you're walking through dense woods, shoes would be a pretty good thing to have on your feet. The terrain itself should have stopped her long before she hit that distance. Indianapolis, Indiana, October 29, 1981. A toddler who disappeared 4 days earlier was found safe and apparently healthy in a vacant house. 18-month-old Tona was found for miles southeast from the apartment in which she vanished, naked and shaking from the cold. 18 months old. For miles. I simply do not believe it is possible for a child that age to traverse that distance through neighborhoods and streets without being spotted or hurt. What really happened? How did she get there? May 24, 1929. Egg Harbor, New Jersey. Missing baby found 5 miles from home. 2.5-year-old David Wesley East, missing since Wednesday, was found in the woods 5 miles from his home. 5 miles for a 2.5-year-old. Come on, be real. And you know the other troubling thing about the smallest kids. They can't explain what happened to them. They have no memory of the journey. This suggests a period of missing time, a key indicator in alien abduction scenarios and dimensional rifts. Pay close attention to this next one. August 11, 1955, Oakdale, Louisiana. Headlines. Child was found 20 miles away in River Swamp. A 14-year-old girl, Helen Buxton, was found crouched behind a piano in a church after being trailed by bloodhounds for 5 hours. The girl's father said Helen could not explain how she crossed a flood-swollen creek or why she wandered through the treacherous swamp. No girl is crossing a flooded creek. That dog doesn't hunt. She has no memories. She's scared. July 30th, 1931. Big Spring, Texas. A 2-year-old boy's body was found 15 miles from the ranch from which he had wandered. If he walked 15 miles in a line, that meant he actually walked 25 to 30 miles. Give it up. And here is a bizarre pattern. In almost all of these cases, the reports mention the children walking through rattlesnake-infested areas. Yet, they are never bitten. How do they not get bit? It's almost as if some unseen entity or energy field is protecting them. I always save the strangest one for last. May 12, 1900. Kippen, Idaho. 100 men searched the woods all night for a lost child. The 2.5-year-old boy was discovered the next day about 2.5 miles from the road, found asleep in an old treetop. I didn't make that final, chilling detail up. Why did I read that to you? Because you are smart. And you know those stories, as told by local newspapers, are physically impossible. If they didn't walk that distance, how did they make it? This brings us back to the rifts. These locations, the vanishing of Singh, the impossible treks of the children, map to known hotspots of paranormal activity. We are talking about areas linked to cryptids and the kind of magnetic chaos reported at places like Skinwalker Ranch. What if these children are not walking but are being displaced by a dimensional rift? The rift is a mechanism for instantaneous, short-range displacement. The child vanishes from our dimension and is then deposited miles away, or even in an impossible spot like the top of a tree. Their experience is not a walk, but a jump. The energy of this dimensional interference, the same force that might be protecting them from rattlesnakes, could also be what the geologist Sudesh Singh unknowingly targeted while drilling for mineral samples. He wasn't lost. He was removed by a force protecting the Earth. The common thread is the impossible distance, the lack of struggle, and the memory loss, the signature of a non-human mechanism at play. The sheer impossibility of these cases forces us to conclude that we are not dealing with a failure of standard search and rescue, but a failure of our known physics. This area of Canada and those strange rural spots across the US and Australia. I'll tell you, it's true. Lots of strangeness occurs out there, as confirmed by very high-integrity people. It is a mystery that continues to haunt us. You are greatly appreciated for joining us on this deep dive. Check out the website, missing411.com. If you can get to Tacoma for the premiere, please do. You will have fun, and you'll meet some extraordinary people who are also searching for the answers. Kindness is king. Kindness is free. And you know and I know we desperately need more kindness in our world today. So please post this episode on your social media. Make sure you are getting the notifications and you're still subscribed. We've had too many reports of people being magically unsubscribed, losing their notifications for months. It's frustrating as all heck, and it means people are missing these crucial pieces of evidence. So check your settings. Be kind, be polite, and always keep asking the hard questions, because that is what we do here on Lost Files.